Damn. Vibes is strong today. Shout out to the sun just looking so beautiful. And also, shout out to the snow for just deciding to bless us this winter. It's been like 6 years almost, I think, since the last time I can remember us having snow on the ground in North Carolina. And I remember as a kid, like, snow was not expected, but it was more uncommon than it was rare. But you know, of course, climate change and all that has just changed the atmosphere a bit, and because of that we don't see snow often. But already this year we've gotten two snows that have actually stuck to the ground, and I like to say that that's an accomplishment, and it looks like somebody's already walked to the trail. We love to see it. We love to see people outside enjoying this kind of weather. You know, I think when I think of snow, it's this interesting phenomenon, right? Because precipitation exists naturally throughout the world, and it comes in various forms. And the form that the precipitation manifests as is contingent upon the conditions of the environment. So conditions plus precipitation equals a certain kind of outcome, whether it's rain, snow, hail, sleet, what have you. And I like to think that, you know, life and specifically creativity can very much be like that. I think the real power of being creative is having the right conditions. And what I mean by that is, like, you have to set up proper parameters so that when it is time for the creativity to flow through you, when it is time for something to precipitate, you will make what you want to make. If that makes sense. Maybe it makes sense. I don't know. But what I'm thinking about is I got back into writing again. Not like I really left writing, because it's not a thing that you can just kind of pop in and out of. I think writing exists even when you're not kind of like holding a pen. Or maybe, I think the broader spectrum would be maybe calling it storytelling. And I got back into storytelling again, and I've been working on this massive series. Easily the biggest series I've worked on, and will probably be the biggest series I work on for, I'd say, at least a couple more years. I like to think it's the equivalent of like my Dune or my Lord of the Rings, because it truly is this expansive world that I had to build the entire universe, and that was fun. And I'm getting back into writing again. I'm working on the second installment of the series, and some time has passed since the last writing session that I had, which I would say was really active probably around like October, November, and then finished up a segment in December, but I'm now getting boots on the ground, walking towards the next goal. And writing is, it's hard sometimes because, once again, you have to set up proper conditions for yourself to be productive, is the word I'm looking for. Productive, not necessarily creative, but to be productive as a writer. That's hard. Like, oh my gosh, you have to like push away all the distractions. You have to really internalize what you're about to do, what you're about to say, why you're gonna say it, and then you have to physically sit down or stand up or verbalize whatever form or fashion you use for the actual medium, but you have to do a physical thing in order to also write as well. For me, in this case, it's typing, and it's really boring. Like, it's really, really, really boring to just sometimes sit at a desk for like 2 hours and just... And yeah, it's more to that because I'm really tapped into what's going on up here. But at the core of it all, if somebody were to walk in the room, they would just see... But again, those are those various conditions that I personally think make my writing sessions more productive. I like to throw in instrumental music that really helps set the mood. Usually having a set playlist as opposed to kind of just like letting random sounds come in, because again, it's almost like I'm trying to go into a trance, and I've chosen specific songs that allow me to diffuse a bit. That's the word I would say. Just not a whole lot. Like, I'm not just completely leaving this universe, but I'm diffusing myself so I'm a little bit more permeable to whatever's coming in, whatever it wants to come out as well. And I also like, if it's in the morning time or daytime, having some tea and a little snack handy. That really goes far. Try to keep my phone away. I will check it periodically, but it's not one of those things where it's like, I can't see my phone for the whole 2 hours. It's just like, no, when I get to a good point, I'll pop in, but I am mindful of how much distractions I allow myself when I am in this writing time. Because you do need a little bit of distraction, especially if you've been doing this for 50 minutes. And then I say, like, yeah, it's nice to take like a 10-minute distraction and then get back into it. And usually in that 50 minutes, if I'm really locked in, I can get to a good stopping point. So why all this talk about writing? One, because I'm super excited to get back into it, and I'm really interested to see where the progression goes. But two, to once again talk about the conditions that are required for an optimal performance or optimal production. I think there's a lot in this life we can't control. There's so much more that we can't control than we can control. And no matter what we do, things are going to happen as they unfold. That's just nature. That's just nature. You know, like, it doesn't matter what kind of plans people might have had before yesterday. Like, I was supposed to be at work right now, but here I am walking in the back trail in the snow. And that's cool. Love it, because it just shows you that this life is it's unpredictable, and there's a certain power and joy in the unpredictability of life, because that's what motivates us. It inspires us. It gets us to do and act and become things because of what we experience and because of what we want to impress upon this world as well. Because it isn't just, we're not just 100% reactionary beings, you know. There's something that's inside us that causes us also to put things into the world. But I like to think about, well, how do we put what we want into the world when there's so much chaos, quote unquote. You know, chaos always gets a bad rep, but I'm just talking about disorder in a sense. Like, how do we find semblance of control in a world that is inherently uncontrollable? And again, it's affecting those conditions. It's looking and saying, what kind of parameters can I set up that will allow me to do this the best way I can? Or what kind of approach should I take in order to get this done? And what atmosphere is better suited for this? You know, and this is my belief, I'm under the impression that it's really difficult to kind of creative write in a coffee shop or something like that. I think there are forms of writing you can absolutely do in those spaces and places, but diving into your mind while there's like people ordering food and drink and all the different distractions that are present, it's not my conducive environment. Now, it may work for some people, but I would argue that they might be fooling themselves. Don't tell the writers. But what I'm getting at here is, again, the conditions. And I think it's a good time in life to every now and then just to evaluate the conditions. To evaluate and say, hey, this worked for me in the past. Is this still working for me? If it is, keep that up, especially if that's the kind of result you're trying to get at. But you can also recognize and say, oh, maybe I need a new playlist that inspires me. Maybe because this story isn't the same story I was writing 6 years ago about college kids doing mushrooms in a frat house, which might be a thing that I wrote about. And instead, I'm trying to write about global conflict and war. Maybe I don't need the same sounds to get me into those spaces. And it's good to alter the conditions, to ask ourselves, well, what's going to bring me to that next stage? And again, you can only alter so much. You can only affect what you can affect. And it's good for us to just be open, to be adaptable. I think I was reading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, one of the 4 books I'm currently going through right now. And it's really my daily morning read. I won't read it every day, but like every other day. And something that really caught me to this day was, I can't really summarize it verbatim, but in paraphrasing, it was essentially like, you have the ability to pierce and penetrate another person's estate for the sake of making them better. And the goal for you should also to be able to have an estate that is willing to be penetrated as well. And I know penetration, very funny word to use, but we're talking Latin translated into Roman, Roman translated into English over the years. They didn't really have the same vocabulary we did. But what I took it as is this notion of being open to change, being open to the mysteries of nature and of life, and having them have a potential force and effect upon your world, because they are real. They are the conditions of our everyday reality that we can not control. So we have to find ways and means of building monasteries mentally, building pathways that allow us to go to the destination that we have. We have this obligation to look at this world and say, okay, today it decided to snow. That wasn't on my list of things to happen today until it started happening last night. Now I have this option to ask myself, well, if these are the elements that I've been dealt, can I use them to the best of my ability to make an optimal product? Which I did. Got some writing done today. And it was just, again, looking and saying, all right, how do I create my mental monastery so that when I'm out in the world, whether it's in a very chill and easygoing place or whether I'm in a difficult place and there's a lot of confusion and hardship present, that I can always retreat back to that mental monastery and find some semblance of not only peace, but production as well. And I don't mean production in the sense of like our capitalistic labor society where everything's about production. Rest is a form of work. No. I just mean producing and progressing on your path in life. I don't know. Again, this is a 15-minute wander in the woods, snow edition. Whoa. And the thing that came to mind today was just what it takes to get into a certain state of mind. And in this particular case, what it takes to get into the writer's mind. And for me, again, it's always about, navigating and setting up the proper parameters and atmosphere so you can be successful. I think I definitely kind of took some lessons from Stephen King. In his book on writing, he describes the muse. And we all know the muse, the creative thing that comes around and goes, da 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 da. But he says something that really inspired me was that you can't control when the muse shows up. But you can decide and control what the muse has when it does show up. And if your muse shows up and you're not ready for them, they're going to go. But if you have the right things ready for the muse might just want to stick around. So you might as well go ahead and get your place together, because you never know what's going to come for you next. like snow.